You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm Mess, and I'm here today with my co-host Ryan, and you're listening to Season 2 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40K, and I'm the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. But before we get into it, we do have a Patreon you guys can check out if you want to support the stream. We also have a Discord where you can get in touch with us and have fun with our Warhammer community. But yeah, let's get into it. So Ryan, what is today's topic?
So today, Mez, you excited little boy that you are, or at least you better be, because I am. I've got a quote from you, or for you, not from you. I don't have a quote from you. I should prepare one of those someday. I should quote you back to you one day and see if you can figure it out, just to, see what happens. Today we're talking about you, Mez. How are you? You okay?
I don't know anymore. I'm conflicted. Also, I'm just adding here, you have a lot of quotes from me, Ryan, but none of them can be said here. I feel like it's not safe for work, but hey.
Accurate, yeah. Alright, so the quote today is actually an excerpt. It's a small section from one of the novels, and it's fantastic. And it's one of the more recent novels. Not that that's going to help you at all, but just for context, right? At the point that this quote takes place, the character in question has been like off-world on a mission, and when they've came back, their base is like destroyed by Chaos Space Marines, and everyone is dead. And they are searching the place for like any survivors or a clue about what the hell's going on or anything like that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, it goes, very little of his stock of parchment had avoided the flames, and the few scraps that had survived were scrawled with endless lists of runes and astrological charts. I couldn't make any sense of them, and let them flutter back to the ground. It was only as I turned to leave that I saw the phrase, written across the door itself, in what looked like blood. The language was our own, the private script we employed for the most secret matters, and which, to an untrained eye, hardly looked like writing at all. Even I almost missed it. Once I saw the patches of dark red, I wondered how they could have been made. Had Locke written them before he died, or even before the attack? In any event, it was unusually concise. He calls his daughters home. What are you thinking?
Oh, Ryan, I could listen to you read for me all day, every day.
I've actually been tempted to do readings of audiobooks.
Oh, Ryan, please do. I reckon you could do it.
I'm going to look into it.
I mean, to be fair though, haven't you like done voiceovers for video games?
I've done voice acting before, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if kind of poetic, beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Also, to what you read, you know what I mean. And a usual Warhammer fashion, very, very heartbreaking at the same time, destruction. You know.
Yes, I felt like it needed the context for it. Otherwise, it was just kind of weird and kind of cryptic, rather than like having that heartbreaking element to it as well. But it provides some kind of tension to the situation, you know? Gives you stakes.
There always is in Warhammer, I'm not gonna lie.
That's fair, yeah. Every 3 seconds the universe is about to end.
I feel like with Warhammer it's always, and then this happened, but wait, there's more. And then that happened, but wait, plot twist, and there's more.
That's only true if you're constantly like fleeting from one side of the galaxy to the other. If you stay in one place, basically one thing happens every 40,000 years. Unless it's Earth.
Yeah, well, everything revolves around Earth.
That's it, yeah.
Everything. Oh, God. Yeah.
So, who do you think we're talking about?
A specific character, you think? Or
No, a faction, a group.
Can you give me some more hints? Some clues?
Okay, right. So the main point of this section that's really important is he calls his daughters home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a hint, it is the Emperor calling back this group to Terra. That's what I was referring to.
Wait, are we talking about the battle nuns? They are like holy and religious and close to him, right?
Yes, they are. And they were once the daughters of the Emperor. That's how they started out, remember, with Goj Vandire.
Uh-huh.
But you're about as close as I ever expected you to get. And I'm actually quite impressed with that, to be honest with you. But it's not quite the Battle Nuns. Although
For God's sakes, right?
yeah, no, trust me, you never would have like gotten right to it. But I'm glad you got that far because it's like it's if the Battle Nuns are like in a box, this thing is like pressed right up against the side of the box.
So as close as can be, right?
Basically, yeah. Without already knowing the topic, you weren't going to get any closer than Battle Nuns because they are Battle Nuns. It's just a different brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Today we are talking specifically about the Anathema Psykana, or the Sisters of Silence.
Oh, wait, you have mentioned that before.
We've mentioned them before. We mentioned them. Oh, when would we have mentioned them? Specifically, when we were doing the Black Crusade, when Gilliman returns to Luna and he battles Magnus on the moon. The Sisters of Silence rock up because every single one of them is a blank. They're all pariahs. They're all soulless.
Yeah.
So it means that they're incredible at fighting warp entities.
Yeah, aren't they like, hunters or something like that?
A lot of the time, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you said that I don't know if you used the phrase bounty hunters or like you're just hunting down rogues and stuff like that.
They do a lot of shit, honestly. But yeah, a lot of the time that is the role they take. But in our topic this episode is specifically them, but we are going to talk about pariahs in general a little bit first.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, our first section is like the whole thing as a concept. Then we're going to get into the actual faction stuff.
Yeah.
So, a blank or a pariah or whatever other name that you want to go for them, as we have mentioned, is a human that is born without a soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this means that they have no link to the warp whatsoever, right? They are non-existent in the warp because the soul is the part of you that links to the warp. So when you die, your soul returns to the warp, does all its horrible stuff there.
Yeah.
But without a soul, you have no reflection in the warp, so none of your actions affect any of the gods or anything else for that matter in the warp. But also, since they have no link to the warp, it has like an area of effect around them as well. So it dampens warp magic. So if they are, say, a psyker throws like magical fire at them or something like that, it'll just poof out before it gets anywhere near them.
Oh, so it won't affect them.
Yeah, the warp can't like touch them. It literally cannot touch them. Yeah. So
that's very overpowered, I would just say.
A lot of the time, yeah. So that is an incredible benefit of them. But it also has an effect on like normal people. So say like you or I was standing next to one of them, we would feel like disgusted by their presence. You feel uncomfortable being near them. So the average person has like an aversion to these people. It's as if you can sense the soulless part of them. It's the dampening effect making you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I feel like you've mentioned that before, where we
have
specific examples saying we probably know a few people in real life.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Know a few people like that in real life. Yeah, that was great. But say you had a really powerful psyker stand next to them, like one of the Space Marine librarians or something like that, an actual active psyker, and just stood them next to one of the blanks. They would be or a lot of the time, they would be in excruciating pain from being cut off from the warp by this person. Okay. So they are an incredible tool for fighting against warp things.
Psychers
especially. Psychers and demons. Demons are also creatures of the warp.
Yeah.
They do have a physical form, so it doesn't just poof them back into the warp, which is what I would hope it would do, unfortunately. But it does take away all the benefits their god gives them. They basically become a purely physical creature rather than a creature of the warp that has taken form in our world. So in the right situations, these people are an incredible fighting force, or just a really useful support troop. Like, even if there was no way these people, like, say you just, I don't know, say you're a space marine and you get sent to some random backwater planet because there was a distress beacon sent out, but, like, you barely think anyone lives there, so they send one guy rather than sending, like, a squad. And you land there and there's, like, a psyker uprising going on and fire's getting thrown around and the place is fucked.
Yeah.
And like, one space marine against some mad psyker that's probably getting help from one of the chaos gods at this point there's a good chance they get taken out. Like, there's a fair bet that that's possible. And, like, you know, through a bit of luck, it is possible that a space marine would lose that fight. But say you just find a random psyker kid not a random pariah kid in the streets, just carry them behind you. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use them as a resource if need be.
I actually have a question with what you're telling me right now.
Yeah.
Because if they are, how can you say, like like a bouncing shield, whatever, you know, their aura is like anti-warp, right?
Yes.
I remember back when we talked about the fall of Cadia, I believe it was, with, like, you know, the whole Saint Celestine and, you know, the 13th like crusade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the warp, I can't remember the specifics. Where I would need to listen to that episode again, but the warp power got diminished, and the demons just disappeared. Would they have the same effect being in the presence of a devil instead of, like, what would actually happen?
So the effect isn't as strong, but it also depends on how the demons kind of taken form, right? Because
they came to be.
Yeah, because sometimes when demons are in our world, it's through a living person that essentially becomes possessed, and then they just turn into the demon and stuff like that. Sometimes they're actually given a form in our world purely through warp magic. But for them to exist, they need to have a physical anchor here in a lot of times, or for them to exist on their own. But they can be kind of forced into our world through, like, sheer warp magic. But if that's cut off altogether, or cut off enough, they will be banished back into the warp. But like I was saying, in some cases, if they do have a physical form in our world already, like if they are possessing someone or something like that, there's a thing where you put metal into demons, and the metal acts as like a bonding agent for our realm. It acts as like an anchor for them, so that they can't be banished easily. They have to be, like, destroyed. So in a point where they have an actual physical form here, the pariah would strip away a lot of their powers and all the benefits from their god, and leave them just as their physical form, which could then just be killed normally by, like, a bolter or a sword, or, I don't know, dropping a toilet on them from high enough. Whatever it takes. You can run them over with a tank if you have to at that point. They'll die. But they lose a lot of their strength and things like that, because a lot of it comes from their god, which they would now be cut off from for a large part. So it doesn't always just banish them altogether, but it can. If you got a bunch of them together, it would do it. If they have, like, a stacking effect. If you get, like, 5 of these people, like the Sisters of Silence in a squad, and they just charge a demon, there's a good chance the demon just goes away.
Like in movies where they just circle in on somebody, right?
Good question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just, I couldn't help but thinking, like, that specific event, because I listened back to the episode recently as well.
Yeah.
So it was fresh in my mind.
So that episode, what we were talking about was the Blackstone pylons that the Necrons had made, that they were going to blanket the galaxy with to cut off the warp entirely, but they never managed to finish it. And there was a bunch of them across the galaxy, and specifically on Cadia there was a bunch as well. And those ones were all holding back the Eye of Terror. It's the reason it wasn't a big tear across the galaxy the whole time. Because the reason it was just an Eye of Terror was because how close it was to the Cadian pylons. And in the Heresy, or sorry, not in the Heresy, in the 13th Black Crusade, they briefly found a way to supercharge the pylons, basically, to put them into, like, 150% efficiency. So it started to, like, push back the Eye of Terror. So it was basically cutting off the warp in that area really heavily. Those will turn up in our episode later, by the way. I'm glad you mentioned that. That saved me explaining them later.
Ooh, great.
Yeah. Okay, so the pariahs have a lot of uses, as we've kind of mentioned there. They're really good in support and combat roles against certain targets and things like that, and in certain environments. But there are other uses for them as well. So some are used as agents of the Inquisition and groups like that, in which they act as like spies. And these ones are sometimes equipped with like bracelets that can turn off the dampening field of their kind of pariah aura. So people around them wouldn't realize they were a pariah and wouldn't be disgusted by them, so that they could blend in with everyone around them and act as a spy. But at the same time, they'd be perfectly immune to like mind reading from psychers, or if it came to it, the powers of a psyker. So they are used in a lot of different ways, and they are extremely useful if used correctly.
I could imagine.
Yeah.
I could imagine,
Yeah. But specifically, the point of today's episode is the Sisters of Silence. So, first thing is that they are not, as I have realized, a lot of people, some people, not a lot of people, some people do actually believe they are not a branch of the Adeptus Sororitas, which is the battle nuns we've talked about in the past. Because on the surface, they look very similar. They are kind of a religious order, not as religious as the Sororitas. They are all female, and they wear similar armor and wield similar weapons. So if you saw a group of Sisters of Silence and the Adeptus Sororitas in a battlefield at the same time, fighting on the same side, you probably wouldn't really tell them apart very easily. But if you met them, you very quickly would, because the Sisters of Silence don't speak and are all blanks. But the Adeptus Sororitas don't have any of that, really. There is a section that I think take the Oath of Silence, but typically they don't. So, there's your cut-off point between those two. They are actually different groups that came from different places altogether. So, as we said earlier, or as we've talked about in the past, the Adeptus Sororitas originated during the reign of Goj Vandire, and were originally the daughters of the Emperor. And then they gradually ended up becoming the military arm of the ecclesiarchy, the religious branch of the empire, because they're not legally allowed to have men at arms anymore, so they decided to have women at arms instead, which is such bullshit, and I hate it, but at the same time I love them, so it's cool. So, in that same vein, though, just to show you the kind of difference, the Sisters of Silence are actually the military arm of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, which is the section of Imperial governance that recruits and trains psychers. So they're not even like under the same section of government either.
No.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, that is like a purely symbolic saying or setting of them or for them in government, and it's purely for governmental purposes. Because the Sisters of Silence don't actually answer to a chain of command within Imperial government. They answer directly to the Emperor, and thus act as a standalone, self-governing body.
Yeah.
So, if you looked at like a chart of hierarchy, they would be under the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, but they'd never actually listened to them. And those people never had any, like, control over them. Interestingly, they are part of like an overall group referred to as the Talons of the Emperor, which is one of the coolest titles ever.
Talons of the Emperor?
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
Sounds cool, yeah.
Yeah, so the Talons of the Emperor are made up of two groups, or primarily two groups. In this case, the Sisters of Silence are the Emperor's left hand, and the Adeptus Custodes are the right, because the two groups were designed as two halves of one functioning whole. So the idea is that you know how Space Marine legions are all like self-sustaining and self-sufficient, so they can recruit and outfit and train all their own troops and everything like that. And they can go off into the galaxy and wage wars on their own without having to like rely on Terra for supplies or for troops or anything like that, or for support or anything. They can do that.
Yeah.
The Adeptus Custodes and the Sisters of Silence don't have that luxury. They're designed to be like an integral part of the Terran government structure. They're very close to home in terms of actual military bodies, but they're designed to work hand in hand together because no one would really expect the Sisters of Silence to go out and take on like Space Marine level threats because they're normal human women. So they're not designed to take on super soldiers or giant magic aliens and shit like that, or chaos demons. Well, they are designed to take on chaos demons, but you know what I mean, right? They're still physically not on the same level as, you know, Space Marines are, so they don't expect the same problem. They know that they're very much a specialized tool. And on the other side of the Emperor, I guess, you have the Adeptus Custodes, who have no powers when it comes to the warp whatsoever. None of them are like psychers or anything like that. They're just better physically than your Space Marines. So, if you pair them together, you end up with an army made up of incredibly powerful, physically, troops supported by extremely well-trained, physically less powerful troops, but now with the benefit of the one thing that the Adeptus Custodes don't have doesn't matter anymore because it wouldn't work anyway, and the enemy doesn't have it either now. So if you pair them together, you level a playing field very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah. So
because my main question with the whole Sisters of Silence was like, they have a massive advantage in terms of the warp and all that stuff, but also a massive disadvantage.
Yes.
You know, in itself. But yeah.
Yeah, the Custodes are there to take up the slack in that area, to take away that disadvantage, which is very cool. And if you look at it from the Custodes side, you've got the same thing where the warp is their weakness. And yeah, the other side take that away. It's cool. It's a nicely designed thing.
But them together, isn't that then, haven't that become overpowered in itself then?
Yes, they are an extremely overpowered fighting force when together, yeah.
Oh, you don't even beat around the bush with it.
No, they're really good at what they do. I'll be honest with you, no one in 40k is sitting around going, God, those Adeptus Custodes are such wusses.
We can take them on.
Like,
sure,
I'll be honest with you, it's a wonder one of them didn't turn up and just snap fucking Horus over their knee. Like, they are absolute units. Only, like, with the birth of the Primaris Marines has the playing field been leveled at all between Space Marines and Custodes, honestly. Because the Primaris are almost the same height as the Custodes now, and are, like, they're a lot closer than Space Marines were to what the Custodes are.
Yeah.
So, until that point, until the Primaris came along, honestly, the gap between them was so unbelievably huge. It was, well, there's a reason that they were hidden away for 10,000 years, let's be honest. Like, storyline-wise, you needed to let the Space Marines do some stuff. And if you just had 10,000 Custodes running around the galaxy, well, Chaos wouldn't really have gotten very much done. So they hid them away for 10,000 years. We have mentioned that, haven't we?
I do believe so.
Yeah, I'm sure we kind of mentioned it when we were talking about the stuff Gilliman changed.
Yeah, but that's some time back.
It was, yeah. So just for an update, after the Emperor died, kind of, after he was interred on the Golden Throne, the Custodians saw it as a failure, obviously, because it's their entire job is to keep that one guy safe. And funnily enough, they wore gold armor with like red capes before that, and they changed them to black because it was like a sign of their failure. Funnily enough. But after that, they didn't leave the palace anymore. There was 10,000 Custodes just in the palace, guarding the palace. Like, they did stuff. They did do stuff, but basically all the Custodes were there. There was very few that still ventured the galaxy, and the ones that did it under, like, very particular rules and with very particular goals in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had to be
It's fair,
like
though. They
sanctioned
did fail
to do
that
it.
job.
They did. They fucked up big time. They had one job and they failed. To be fair, their job was protect God. So I don't know how they were going to win that one eventually. Eventually, it had to go wrong, you know?
To be fair, though, right? You can't say the Emperor is dead. He's still kind of doing his job, right?
He is. I like the theory that the only reason he's still alive is because the orcs think he's alive.
Yeah, we've mentioned that before.
I love that theory, because honestly, that could be true. I don't think anyone's bothered to like send the orcs a letter being like, by the way, the Emperor's kind of dead. Oh, okay, cool. It's just like everything just shuts down. Like, fuck.
Wrong message now. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. April Fools.
Send another one. Sorry, we retract that statement. And it's like, oh, okay. False alarm, guys. Everyone just powers back up and the Emperor's throne. And like, oh my god.
But that's just suspicion, right? With the orcs, it's not confirmed. I really wish they were to confirm it. Then that would be cool.
No. There's a. I'll tell you right now, the Emperor is very much still alive.
Yeah, obviously. Otherwise, he couldn't do what he does.
Yeah, but to be honest, it's a storyline point that I really want to get to, but I can't yet. So just know stuff's going down after Gilliman's back. Like, a lot has went down after Gilliman came back, and we have covered none of it yet.
I'm actually looking forward to that because that's part of the story in terms of Warhammer that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, the more modern stuff.
Yeah, I would really like to hear more about it, especially with the Emperor on the throne. Like, how long can he keep on doing what he does? Like, it takes a lot of what was it, Psycho Souls?
1,000 Psychers have to be sacrificed every day,
right?
Yeah.
I would like to see what happens if shit goes like hit the fan, right? If shit hits the fan, what happens then?
Yeah, that's it. So we will get to those sections of the story soon, I think.
I will look forward to it.
Me too. I'm so excited for
50.
it. Season 15, what was going on in 2022? We've got 6 years to cover since then. Let's continue.
Oh, God.
Alright. Sisters of Silence. We're going to finally get into it, so we've kind of just been rambling for a while. Vaguely around the topic. Alright, so the origins of the Sisterhood of Silence are honestly questionable at best. They're either barely known and shrouded in mystery, or they're unknown altogether, right? But in the early days of the Great Crusade, so once the Emperor had all his sons back, and all the legions were out taking over planets and stuff in the name of the god, or no, in the name of the Emperor, not the god Emperor yet, that came later. Sorry.
Yep.
Heresy.
That's actually a no, Ryan.
That was, I apologize. I redact my statement. I'm sure the Ordo Hereticus will be here shortly for me.
Knocking on the door.
I don't think they even knock. I could just blow up your house.
Yeah. You knew they're coming before you already, you know.
It's like nobody expects the Inquisition. Like, no, everyone expects the Inquisition. So, in the early days of the Great Crusade, there was an uprising on a planet close to Terra called, and I'm going to struggle to say this, Pentacanes? I'm going to go with Pentacanes. Anyway, on this planet, it was said that there was a psyker, there were psykers performing miracles, right? And in response, the Adeptus Astra Telepathica sent troops to quell the rebellion because, well, an uprising had started to take root on this planet, and there was rumors that there were psykers performing miracles. So they sent, the people that are in charge of the psykers to go deal with it, because we'll just round up a few more while we're at it. So Adeptus Astra Telepathica gets sent to go deal with it, right? So they sent troops, and basically all of them were killed very quick, or most of them were killed very quickly by the psykers that are on the planet being evil and stuff, as you would expect. Except for one squad. One squad survived the bloodbath that occurred, and they were known as the 5th 913 Indentured Irregular Infantry, or, kind of colloquially, or unofficially I should say, the Daughters of the Crow. An all-female Imperial Army regiment. These were the only ones that survived this Psyker massacre. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can see where this is going. But Commander Gigan Dantes, which is a really cool name, by the way, who was the commander of the League of Black Ships vessel that had came here to quell the rebellion, which was still in orbit. He was on the ship at the time. Realized that this entire unit must all be blanks. They must all be pariahs, and he used them as like a linchpin to found their assault and quash the rebellion. Which, to be fair, they didn't actually destroy altogether, but they were able to actually like start taking ground using this one squad who, could go fuck up the Psykers without getting hurt, or with very little damage done. But luckily, the 6th Legion, the Space Wolves, rocked up and just murdered everyone, so it was fine. Day was saved. Now, it is said that this regiment of pariahs may be what caused the creation of Sisters of Silence. They may have been like the founding principle for it, because they were so useful in this one very specific scenario, which would probably come up again, so we should be prepared for it. But to be honest, it's also very likely that the Emperor had introduced the concept of Sisters of Silence before, and had like used this as a way, as like a front, I guess, to introduce them to the Imperium in an honest manner that the people would accept.
Yeah.
So he probably had them going on long before this. He probably sent them there as Sisters of Silence, pretending to be an infantry squad within the normal guardsmen.
So basically, it's a proof of concept.
Essentially, yeah, it seemed like that might be what it is. But we don't know if, like, the League of Black Ships commander saw this and was like, oh, these ones are fantastic, told people about it, and then the Emperor started it. Or if the Emperor had already started it and was like, shit, I can't just turn up with an army of soulless women and just hope everyone's cool with it. I have to, prove that they're useful first, and then everyone will accept it before I even start throwing them out there. So,
Ryan, as a loyalist, you should always believe the Emperor is has seen it coming.
Yeah, I choose to believe the Emperor is 86 steps ahead at all times.
Yes.
So I'm assuming he already, had them and just, told them to lie about who they were for a little bit.
Remember, Ryan, history is written by the victor.
Remember, history is deleted by most of the Imperium.
That's it. Yeah.
So that's kind of as close as we can get to an origin for them, because basically no one fucking knows. And we're gonna, so during the Great Crusade, as it kind of continued and went on properly and stuff, they became actually used troops during the Crusade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were involved a lot and in a lot of different places. So just as some examples that you would probably understand, in one of the really early Horus Heresy novels, one of the ones about the Death Guard, first part of the book is a mission that they go on, the Death Guard go on, and they've got a squad of Sisters of Silence right alongside them the whole time. Helps them take down a bunch of Psykers. Yeah. So they're right there from the start of the heresy. You know when Lehman Russ and the Space Wolves went to go kill Magnus?
Yeah.
Yep. Sisters of Silence on the ground with them to turn off the fucking Thousand Suns bullshit.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or when Horus attacked the palace, there were not Thousand Suns. There was Sisters of Silence all over the palace helping to defend it because they were immune to the fucking demons, or well, at least they weakened the demons. So they've been around, they've been involved a lot, right?
I would actually, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Again? In terms of the whole, with the Emperor's plan,
Mm-hmm.
with the whole shield, with the, keeping magic out, and Magnus came in and root everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't that have been nullified then, if they were around?
So
or is it again one of them there was not enough presence of them to keep it away?
It's basically just that, yeah. It's you would need so many of them to have the same effect that it's But also the Emperor wasn't planning for that to happen, so he didn't just have hundreds of Sisters of Silence standing around his throne at the time.
No, but he should have seen it coming, right?
Well, he should have, clearly.
But I'm just thinking about it. Wasn't that exactly what he was kind of working on,
Basically, yes. Well, no. So he wasn't actually working on anything to do with that. He was working on setting up a webway portal in the throne room, or on Terra, not in the throne room. But he had set up his own shielding at the time to stop things coming through the webway while he was working on it.
Yeah.
And Magnus just, fucking punched a hole
Kool-Aid
clean
Man.
through his defenses and just let everything in. So having Sister of the Silence around only really would have helped after Magnus had done his bullshit. It would have stopped the Emperor like having to panic to stop shit coming through immediately. It wouldn't really have stopped Magnus from blowing a hole in it in the first place.
Yeah, they can stop the blood from flowing out of a wound, gunshot wound, but they can't stop the gunshot in itself, right?
Yes, that's basically it in that scenario. That's a good way of talking about it, yeah. The other thing is they weren't like based in the palace at the time. Although there are only 2 groups that have free reign of the palace, that they can go wherever they want without being like led anywhere, and the Sisters of the Silence are one of them. They're allowed to walk the palace like, unhindered. And so are the Emperor's Honor Guard, the Custodes. They're also allowed to walk the palace on their own because they are the Talons of the Emperor, funnily enough. But their actual base is on Luna. It's on the moon. It's called the Somnus Citadel, and that's where the Sisters of the Silence have their, that's where they work from. That's where they, live, train, recruit, whatever, and venture forth into the galaxy to do the Emperor's bidding.
Yeah, and still close to Terra.
Yeah, I believe, and I think they also believe, that the reason that they're kept like so close by, but also like at arm's length, is because of the natural aversion people have for just being near them.
Yeah, I was actually about to say that because they're like soulless.
Yeah.
It is, the red wherever they walk, it's just like, nobody wants them around, but like we want you close.
Like just in case a demon turns up, can you be like 10 feet away, please?
It's like the smelly spell. No, sorry.
But you got that one space marine that refuses to wash his armor. You're like, dude, okay, like we need you around because there's like space bugs everywhere. But can you like be over there, or can you at least be like downwind?
Can it be just outside my door ready when shit hits the fan? Ready to back me up.
Can you be nearby but outside of smelling range, please? That's all I need from you. Like, you can lunge like 40 feet in like half a second. It'll be fine. Alright, so that was like their gimmick during the, in the run-up to the heresy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But after the heresy, the Sisterhood was left in a kind of state of disarray, like a lot of the Imperium was after Horus's bullshit. They had heavy casualties because a lot of them were called to Terra for the defense of the palace. So, and because they were, kind of a front line against demons, a lot of them were really badly injured or just killed. So their numbers were rapidly decreased by just Horus's nonsense that one day, or else it lasted a lot longer than a day, but still. And a lot of them were also like scattered across the galaxy doing their job. But their numbers were depleted a lot because so many were called to Terra. And basically anyone within arriving range in time turned up. So it meant that like a huge amount clustered in the palace to protect the place and were subsequently killed. But
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Because I do believe you have mentioned this before when we talked about them before briefly, that they kind of disappeared from history.
Yeah!
There's like a void. I don't know how long it was.
Well, this is it.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So, because so many of them were scattered and their numbers were diminished so heavily, a lot of the ones that were like kind of scattered in the galaxy on their own or like in a very small squad, they didn't have anywhere to go back to really, and they didn't really have any way going there because they were now in a galaxy scattered with no way of getting help really because the general populace didn't like them because of their soullessness.
Dreadful.
Yeah. And now they had more enemies than ever because Chaos Marines were fucking everywhere now, and the galaxy was in a state of turmoil, and everything was fucked. So they were being killed off even quicker just by doing their job in the galaxy as a whole, so their numbers reduced even more. Some of them, the ones that were like left on their own and stuff like that, or in small squads, were like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm just going to try and live. So they tried to like blend into regular human society, but usually it ended up with them getting forced out and like banished or burned as a witch just for being soulless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Oh yeah, the obvious reasons. But some did continue their work alone or in their squads that they were in at the time. They just kind of became bounty hunters against psychers and cultists and stuff like that because they were good at it, is what they were made for. So they just kept doing it. A lot of them, or well, a lot of those scattered across the galaxy. But as time progressed, they were eventually shunned and disbanded by Imperial government altogether, leaving them, or leaving what little remained of them, with no aid or resources, and causing their numbers to dwindle even further. So they were actually officially disbanded by the Terran government. I think it was around M32. Or in the 30... No, it wouldn't be 32, no. That's wrong.
No.
No, that'd be wrong. Anyway, at some point, they were disbanded officially by the Terran government. So what choice did they have now? You know what I mean? They had no way of getting more of them. They had no way of getting, like, their weapons or anything fixed or anything like that. So they basically just died out altogether. Their citadel on Luna was left basically abandoned, short of the last few who stayed there, who formed what is called the Fellowship. And the Fellowship were the last remaining members of the Sisterhood, whose descendants now just act as caretakers for the Citadel, basically just maintaining it for the day when the Sisterhood returns. And unfortunately, as the 40th millennia dawns, the Sisterhood of Silence they're just another myth of Imperial history, buried and forgotten, left to wither and fall in an age where they are needed the most.
Great. Thoughts? Not many. It's a shame.
It is. They're a very cool faction.
They're very cool. I feel like this has actually been good to talk about them because it ties a lot together with stuff that I remember actually from previous episodes. Even some that's actually like back to the 13th Black Crusade and stuff like that. We talked about that a while ago now.
It was like 3 months ago at this point.
I'm Ryan. I'm impressed.
Yeah, no, you're doing well. This is what I mean. Your knowledge is obviously building at this point because the more factions we go through, and the closer they are tied. So the Xenos ones, not so much because we've done a lot of human history at this point. But basically, a lot of the human ones, you're like, no, I know these guys. I've got stuff to say. I've got inquiries to make. It's cool. I love it.
Well, I still feel more comfortable with being the listening ear, tuning into whenever. When I remember something, or I feel like I can contribute, even when the stuff I remembered right now, I was like, the disappearance from history, where they went away, technically, right? I was like, and your reaction, right? I was like, did I do it good right there?
Oh, yeah, you did, yeah. Yeah, see, so that's the thing. Now you know why and how they went away.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I like this.
But wait, there's more.
Oh, of course there is. There's always more and more.
So, that was 40th millennia. They're gone and forgotten, right? That's the idea. But as the 41st millennia is about to end, and the galaxy is about to change and become a place no one will recognize with the fall of Cadia, right? Trajan Valoris, chief custodian of the Adeptus Custodes, so the leader of the custodians, puts out an official order. The Sisters of Silence are to be collected wherever they still live and returned to Terra, because he calls his daughters home.
That's the first thing you said. Okay.
Yeah. So he sets out the few custodians whose job it is to venture the galaxy to gather any living Sisters of Silence, right? And the sisters are few in number and are heavily scattered, but thanks to the work of sisters like Sister Hestia, who kept a group together and actually ran a chamber of the Sisters of Silence. Like, she ran her own group of them and kept them together and, like, had a hidden base for them that was pretending to be a religious ecclesiarchy building so no one would question it and stuff like that. So they were still doing missions out of a convent that she was running and hiding from everyone and everything like that to keep them alive, right? Thanks to people like her, the sisterhood had not died out altogether. There were still remainders. So they were able to gather them back together.
Yeah.
And what remnants could be found were returned to Terra as Cadia fell. A lot of them were still on their way back as Cadia actually was destroyed, and the Cicatrix Maledictum tore across the galaxy. But upon Guilliman's arrival on Luna and his battle with Magnus, some of those that had returned were absolutely vital in his fight against, and in the fight between those two Primarchs. Because had the sisters not turned up, there's a good chance that Guilliman would have just been killed by Magnus right there on Luna, and then Magnus would have had free reign to go attack Earth.
Yeah.
But thanks to the sisters being there to weaken Magnus's powers, Guilliman was able to force him back through the Webway portal and lock him out Luna. So even now, the last few remainders that are there are saving the day. And that's like, they've only been back on Terra for like a day and they're already like, shit, there's a demon Primarch, go, go, go. Send in the 4 women we found so far. It's like, they're literally all we have. What are we going to do? Send in Joel with his last gun? The fuck's he going to do? Like, the only benefit of sending him is he can die first. Sorry, I sidetracked a little bit there.
Yeah, a bit.
So, this is a part we didn't actually mention during 13th Black Crusade, right? When that was all going on, the warp was in turmoil because of the kind of the wave that went out from the Eye of Terror opening up. And the Astronomicon actually went out. The light of the Astronomicon disappeared. And everyone on Terra fucking panicked. And there was like mass uprisings in all like the subsectors and things like that. It was a whole shit show on Terra for a while. And this is actually during the point where Guilliman is like in the Emperor's throne room talking to the Emperor and stuff like that. So Guilliman's on Terra, but everything is a fucking hellscape now because they can't communicate with the warp and no one can use the warp to travel because they don't have a guiding light anymore to tell where the hell they're going.
Yeah.
But another thing happened at this point, which we also didn't mention, right? It's called the the sacking of the Lion's Gate. So around the Imperial Palace, there is a bunch of gates, right? And they all have special names, and it's like Attack on Titan, right? Think about it that way. There's a bunch of gates, and if one goes down, it's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Lion's Gate is one of the gates, and outside the Lion's Gate, a shitload of demons turned up. Khorne's demons. So big red angry bastards with axes and stuff rocked up outside the gate, right? And I mean a legion of these fuckers turned up. Like, and they all just assaulted the gate. And they actually destroyed it. They actually brought down the gate.
Ooh.
Right?
Okay.
But when these demons turned up, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Custodes exited the palace in their masses to battle the demons. So, legions of demons turn up, and they're like, alright, let's fucking do this. All of them just lock their helmets on and charge out to kick ass. Like, we've not been sitting around doing fuck all for 10,000 years. We've been training. Let's do this, dickheads.
I've been waiting for this.
Yeah. But, also for the first time in 10,000 years, the Sisters of Silence took to the field alongside the Custodians to battle those demons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And after that, with the return of Guilliman, he officially reinstated the Sisterhood of Silence as an order, and an order was put out to rebuild the Sisterhood of Silence as a fully functioning section of government and as like a military body. So they were to start recruiting again. They were to be outfitted properly. They were to be, given whatever they needed basically to become a functioning part of the Imperium again.
Yeah.
But also they were ordered with rebuilding the Somnus Citadel so that they would have their base back. So after Guilliman comes back, there's actually Sisters of Silence in their citadel again. So the Fellowship that were maintaining it finally, got what they were waiting for, the return of the Sisterhood, which is cool. And now, as it stands, with the Indomitus Crusade, Guilliman's crusade to take back the galaxy from all the chaos nonsense that's going on since the Great Rift opened, the Sisterhood is now at full fighting numbers. They are acting properly as they were initially intended to. So there's convents of them in every section of the galaxy, and they are also providing troops for the Crusade, fighting on the front lines to take back planets, alongside Guilliman's Space Marines and Primaris and everything like that. So as it stands, they are currently back to where they were initially intended to be, but now with more support than they ever actually had.
About damn time, right?
Yeah, about damn fucking time. So there is a happy ending with these guys, and I love that.
Yeah, that's rare in Warhammer. That's
It
rare.
is, right?
Yeah.
Usually it just ends with them being forgotten forever.
Or dead. And
Or both.
Yeah.
A lot of people in 40k are dead and forgotten. Trust me.
Yep.
And since we usually do troops, but they don't really have different kinds of troops. They just have Sisters of Silence. Oh, yeah. I actually forgot to mention a really important detail.
Go on.
When they finish their training and become a full-fledged member of the Order, they take a vow of silence directly to the Emperor, and that's why they're the Sisters of Silence.
Oh.
I just realized I forgot to mention that part, which is a pretty important bit.
Yeah, that's a very important part, right?
And because of that, they speak in really complicated sign language called Thoughtmark.
That only they can understand, right?
No. Loads of people understand it. It's pretty common in the Imperium to know some form of it. There's one called Battle Sign, which is just the parts of it that you would use in combat. So that, and I think it's standard for Space Marines to know this, because they use it to each other. So have you ever seen any war movies or things like that, where you got Spec Ops Marines or Spec Ops troops or anything like that doing something, and they have to be silent while they're leading a squad, and they do all the hand signs and stuff to tell their squad what to do?
Yeah.
That's also part of it. That's just called Battle Sign. So every Space Marine knows that, because they need to be able to use it for just military stuff, just when they need to be quiet. So they can communicate, but Thoughtmark is a really complicated form that not everyone knows, but it's still able to be learned by anyone, basically. Custodians all know Thoughtmark, stuff like that.
So highly advanced baseball tactic marks, right? You know what to do with it.
Yeah, basically, something like that. But they're able to convey emotion and stuff through it and everything. It's crazy. Really complicated. So I'm not going to do troops because it's just battle nuns, basically. They have different weapons. Some of them have flamers, some of them have great swords, stuff like that. But we're not going to get too into that because it's not a very wide area to discuss. But I do have a notable character to tell you about, and it's fun.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know that quote from the start?
They're calling my daughters?
Yeah, he calls his daughters home. That whole section is from the point of view of a woman called Sister Tano Alea, right? And she is a member of Hestia's chamber of Sisters of Silence, the ones that were, kept as a functioning group on some random backwater planet called Areza, just by this one sister who decided she was keeping them together. And so she was off-world. She wasn't at the convent at the time that the place was attacked, as I explained for the quote. Right? So while she was off-world dealing with a cult uprising, their base was attacked by Chaos Marines and everyone was killed. And she turns up and finds the message that says he calls his daughters home and decides, all right, back to Terra. Let's fucking go. And she ventured for Terra, but the Astronomicon went out. So she had no way of knowing how to get there. And they basically just did a bunch of rapid jumps. so that they could go like into the warp for a bit, come out, figure out where the hell they are, point in the right direction, do it again, and keep doing that. So that they were getting closer, but they couldn't do it very quickly. So it was taking them a while to get there. And eventually they were found by a ship that they assumed was going to destroy them, but were boarded rather than destroyed. And it was actually one of the custodians that had been sent out to find the Sisters of Silence, and a squad of sisters that he had already found that had came aboard. They had came for her to find her. So they led them back to Earth. But when they got back, when they arrived, it was actually during the battle with all the demons and the custodians and sisters all fighting. They arrived during that, so they landed in the battlefield and just started fighting. But it was basically just us, like 30 Sisters of Silence, battling their way through the center of this demon army. So they were like, right, well, we're gonna fucking die. Like, it's only a matter of time till we get overwhelmed here. But through the battle, they spot a custodian and a group of Grey Knights, you know, the ones specifically made for killing demons. She spots a group of them also doing the same thing they are, in the middle of the battle, just killing stuff. So they meet up with them, they fight their way to each other, and then just team up. Which is fun. So,
which is tactically smart.
Very smart. They end up killing a Bloodthirster, which is one of Corrin's greater demons, during which she saves the life of the custodian. I'm sure he gets injured. The Bloodthirster like gut punches him and fucks up all his ribs and everything. And while he's like lying on the ground, the Bloodthirster's about to like crush him with its axe. And she just like smashes her sword clean into the back of its leg, just gutting its tendons and everything. And because it crumples a bit, the custodian's able to like jump up and just run it through with his spear. So because of this, the Valerian, the custodian, feels he owes her a debt. And because of that, they're led into a situation. So she found a kind of a weird map at the cult thing she was doing at the start before her convent was destroyed, and she brought it with her, and basically the two of them figure out that it's a map that highlights a bunch of planets around Earth, not too far away but not too close either, but they are like, you wouldn't say they were, whatever, anyway. So they go to the closest one because she's adamant this is another location they're going to attack, and she wants revenge. And Valerian goes along because, well, I owe you my life in a way, because you saved me.
Yeah.
But they both round up troops, because they're like, we're not just going to run in there and, like, die. We want to kill a bunch of them first. So they get about 30 Sisters of Silence and a handful of custodians, steal a ship, and then just go to this planet. Which is pretty cool that a custodian just steals a ship. I'm pretty sure that's heresy. Of a really weird form. So when they arrive at this planet called Vorlise, right, they find a massive Chaos Space Marine ship in orbit, and below it on the planet's surface, an area has been cleared, like bombed, all like so it's just blanket like clean. And they're like, that's weird. Something's about to get dropped there that we don't want dropped there because they've cleared a landing spot. So they board the ship, kill a shitload of Space Marine, or Chaos Space Marines, I should say. A bunch of them die, obviously. And then they find the thing they were going to drop onto the planet. And it's one of the Blackstone pylons from Cadia.
Oh.
Right? So they get to it, and basically it's going to drop from these chains. So they just like use a grenade to melt the chains so that it like locks into place and it can't drop. They lock the release mechanism, I should say. They weld it solid. And then they just gang up and protect that one point for as long as they can. But obviously more and more Chaos Marines just keep coming and coming and coming. But luckily, they hold out just long enough for reinforcements to turn up. Because Gilliman was on his way.
Of course.
So when Gilliman finds them, there is only 3 people left alive out of the whole like 40 people they had brought. It's Valerian, Alea, and one other custodian are the only ones left alive. And they had managed to prevent the pylon from dropping. because Gilliman rocked up with like the squad that he had on Cadia, so they just cleared the place, no problem at all. Just wiped the place clean of Chaos Marines and just took out the ship altogether, so it wasn't able to drop the pylon. And afterwards, Gilliman actually gave them both like honors at a big ceremony to like venerate them as heroes to the wider Imperium. So like they had a big ceremony on Terra where they were like, "These are your heroes," and basically just showed off all the people that had like saved the day during the whole Cadia thing. And these two were involved in it now because they had saved the day. Because the reason they were trying to drop the pylon onto this planet is there are like 7 planets around Terra, a fair distance away, but not like ridiculously far, which are areas that you use to do long-range warp jumps. So you don't like take off from Terra, immediately do a warp jump to the other side of the galaxy. You go to one of these systems and then do it, right? And I can't remember the exact reason for it, but there is a good reason for it. I think it's something to do with the Emperor's presence on Terra makes it, like, questionable to take warp jumps from that area. But what the Chaos Marines had been doing, they'd been going to all those planets and planting a pylon there so that it would cut off any ships from Terra being able to do long-range warp jumps.
Yeah.
So they were basically just boxing them in. And they had already landed all but one of them. Vorlise was the last one. And these random custodians and Sisters of Silence managed to stop them and save the day.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that is the story of Tanau Alea. There is more to it, actually. That stuff's all covered in one book. But she's a very cool character. There's a point where she's walking through like a normal inhabited area with just normal humans, and someone looks at her and like smiles. So she like just growls at them and does a little thought mark gesture that stuns her. How dare you smile at me, you bitch. She's basically like Battle Nun version of Wednesday Addams. Is great. Such a fun character. But I feel like that's about as much as I planned to cover about Sisters of Silence.
Nice. I mean, I reckon we're gonna hear a lot more about them. Like they're gonna pop up here and there.
Yeah, they're a lot more kind of around now because there's so many of them, I guess, now. And they're a lot more prevalent, I guess, is the way to explain it.
Yeah. But yeah, up until then, it's been me, Mess, and Ryan, and thank you guys for listening to Iterators of the Imperium Podcast Season 2. We will see you in the next one. Take care and peace.
Bye.